Hey there, my friend. Let's have some fun with another sketchbook session today. Welcome back to my cozy art channel. If you're new here, my name is Melanie and I'm a mixed media artist, but I also like to work digitally on my iPad for projects like coloring books and picture books. Today we're going to be painting Dingle, Ireland, so we're going to change up our music to some lovely Irish tunes. Our reference photo today is a gorgeous snapshot that I took this past summer while visiting Ireland with my family. So as I mentioned a second ago, this specific location is Dingle, Ireland. It's a beautiful seaside town, and this was actually our view from our Airbnb living room. It was unbelievable. I would love to go back here one day and stay even longer and just sit and paint while looking out the living room window. It was a dream staying there. We even got lucky and saw dolphins one morning. So, the reference photo is going to remain up on the screen throughout this video, and you are more than welcome to draw or paint it along with me. It's my own personal image, so you have my full permission to make some art with it. In fact, I'm asking you nicely to please join me and make some art. And then feel free to share it and tag me at the Swimming Owl if you do. I'm also going to include a link for you to download this image from me if you would like to see it a little bit bigger on your own device while you're creating. Okay, so let's chat about the actual art happening right now. I'm going to be taking a mixed media approach today and mixing materials like Neo Color II Pastels, my watercolors, watercolor pencils, and then I almost always top things off with some Copic white paint. That's kind of one of my secret weapons. And the sketchbook that I'm using is the Strathmore Soft Cover Mixed Media Art Journal. That's a lot to say. It's not actually my preferred sketchbook though, as I prefer their watercolor version of the softcover art journal, but I told myself that I had to use up this sketchbook first before I'm allowed to purchase a new one. This mixed media journal just doesn't love the amount of water that I use personally. So this sketchbook is better suited for things like colored pencil, pastels, and even just like some light water or gouache use would be okay. For today's video, I decided to speed this up just a bit this time because this painting actually took me close to an hour to complete. I'm still working out how to share these sketchbook sessions with you in my painting sessions. If you prefer the more real-time view like I did previously, let me know in the comments, and then I can go back and continue editing the videos in that fashion moving forward. Because I want to create things that interest you and that inspire you to create artwork yourself. So tell me what works best for you. Do you like the real time, or do you like the sped up versions a little bit so that it doesn't take up your entire day? Because like I mentioned in last week's sketchbook session, my goal is to inspire you to create and make art. I'm here to show you that there isn't a right or wrong way, and that mistakes are okay, and that your sketchbook is a safe place to play, experiment, and make messes. We're here to show up and make art in our sketchbook. And if you're anything like me, watching somebody else create art causes you to get an itchy urge to create as well. So this is the perfect opportunity today to grab your materials and sit here with me for the next like 20-25 minutes and make something in your sketchbook. Feel free to follow along with the image or not. Just make something. It will be so good for your mental health, I promise. Okay, so as you have been watching here, I'm starting with my Neo Color II Pastels. Now I'm still getting used to this supply and getting to know it, and I'm coming to the conclusion that I love these pastels for creating work a little more quickly and messy, but not for achieving the kind of colors and textures that I usually prefer. My recent sketchbook sessions have taught me that I prefer working with watercolor pencils and watercolor first, and then potentially adding some accent colors and textures with the Neo pastels later. So sort of reversing the order of what I did here today. So after laying down that base of the pastel, I then came in with just some clean water and I started treating it like a watercolor pencil. and I'm wetting down each of the sections now and working in sections. And then I tap in some other watercolor on top of that pastel to really bump up the color in certain areas. And I'm also encouraging you to take creative license with this reference. It does not need to look exactly like the picture. Feel free to change things up, take things out, add things in. It's your sketchbook session. You get to do it how you want to do it. So you're definitely going to be able to tell that my mountains and my sky do not match the reference photo exactly. And that's okay. I'm playing and enjoying the color and texture here and making this piece my own. So here is where you're seeing me tap in some of my actual watercolor paint into this. And the reason I like doing this again is to really bump up the color and use some of those colors in my watercolor palette that I know are colors I enjoy and that I'm gonna like how they dry and the vibrancy that's gonna be there. So the thing I do like about this process of putting the Neo Color pastels down first and then wetting them with some clean water is that it's almost like unleashing the color. So you're starting with this kind of dry color with this scribbly texture, but then you get it wet with your watercolor brush and some clean water, and it like makes the color explode. It's pretty magical. It's a magical process. I will give it that. It is a lot of fun, which is also probably why I like working with my watercolor pencils in the same way. That unleashing of the color, that process that happens is very fun and very inspirational to me. So I'd be really interested to hear if you use NeoColor pastels, and if so, how do you like to use them? What's your favorite process with these? At what point do you like to add them into your work, or do you complete entire pieces with just the pastels? I'm always eager to hear how other people like to use their supplies. And remember that there isn't a right or wrong way to use things. If you found something that works for you, that is wonderful, and don't let anybody else tell you that you can't do it. Art supplies are meant to be used. They're not supposed to be precious materials that we leave on the shelf unattended. Just pick them up and use them in a way that feels right. If you've got somebody in your life that's telling you to use your supplies in a different way because you're doing it wrong, then you tell them there's no such thing as the art supply police and maybe kindly hang out somewhere else. It actually reminds me of a kind of funny story. Well, I can laugh about it now. I didn't laugh about it at the time, but a story from college. I have my associate's degree in art and photography, and so I took a ton of art courses, getting that degree obviously, and one of the classes was a sculpture class, and the professor was not a nice man. He was the head of the art department, unfortunately, and he just had this like elitist attitude about how things should be done. He thought there were right and wrong ways for everything, and his way was always the right way. And so we were taking this sculpture class, and we were supposed to be making a bust, and some of us were struggling with this. And one of the girls, who was kind of a friend, she was not happy with how her piece had turned out. And so I just made a suggestion, because we were having fun, right? We were supposed to be learning, but also having fun. I made the suggestion of like, well, you didn't like how it turned out, but you know what you could do? I've seen these really cool things where people grow really cool plants out of the top of a sculpture. You could kind of take the top of the head off of this bust and then make the hair be a really cool plant. And my professor was so disgusted with that suggestion, and he told her that I was encouraging her to make kitschy trash art, and why would I ever tell somebody to make sculpture like that? And I laugh about it now. I was like really upset with him in the moment, because it was just like, how dare you? Who are you to tell us what to do with our artwork? And if she enjoyed that idea and it would make her like something that she previously hated and felt bad about, then why not? Like, was he the sculpture police? Apparently he was. So anyway, don't let people like that tell you what you can do with your artwork. That is just toxic, nasty behavior and we don't need it. So kindly hang out somewhere else, sir. Okay, so back to my sketchbook piece here. At this point, I am putting in my regular watercolor and I'm actually playing with the pastel colors that I have that you're seeing on the right there. And I really love a pastel watercolor. It creates a really interesting look over the top of things. So I'm adding it into these hills and also the mountains in the background. This is the Pastel Dreams set. And the company I mentioned before, they sometimes go by Prima Marketing, but also they go by Art Philosophy. But this Pastel Dream set is really fun and I can highly recommend it, especially if you are sketchbooking and playing and just having fun with art. They are super cool. So at this point, now that I have a really good base down, this is when I start trying to determine how I'm gonna layer in more texture and color. What approaches am I gonna take to get these different textures and looks here? So like I need to get in these grassy shapes in the foreground. I'm gonna need to make that middle ground hill look more like a cliff or mountain. The water is gonna need a little bit more texture. And then when things dry really well, I'll come back in and I'll put in that sea stack that you can see that's close to the middle of the painting. Sea stacks are so amazing, and that is definitely what drew me to wanting to create this landscape, is that sea stack in the view. The other thing that I'm doing throughout this sketchbook session that I'm doing off camera is occasionally I'm taking my blow dryer and drying the page so that way I can work on the layer still without disrupting something that's already there. And I don't always like using the blow dryer because it does feel like it kind of mutes down my colors sometimes. But when you have a limited amount of time to create like I do, I have to do what I have to do so that way I can complete this painting and get to have my creative time. So you may not know this about me, but I am a mom to a 4-year-old, and I also run another business, which is a photo editing business. So life is really busy and I don't have a ton of creative time right now. It'd be awesome if one day I could go full-time with art, but right now it is a part-time job for me. And I have to maintain that other business, and I'm a mom. So those things limit my creative time, and by using something like a blow dryer, it allows me to complete this painting in an hour. Whereas before, pre-baby and with unlimited amount of free time on weekends and evenings, I could have taken my time and let things dry normally, but I'm finding ways to make it work so that way I can create in the time available to me. Alright, so here is where I finally get to paint in that lovely sea stack, which I was super excited about. I think in a future sketchbook session, I would like to do more of a close-up of this sea stack, or even maybe the beach view of this sea stack, because we had like a little walk we could take that was just like 5 minutes down the road, and we were able to go down onto the beach, which you can't see from this view, but basically it was like right over that hill, and we could access the beach and get a really cool view of that sea stack from a different angle. So that'd be kind of cool to paint that in another session. But for this one, I really wanted to get this pulled back view from our Airbnb first. So at this point, this is where I really start seeing things getting a lot more interesting and fun, because I'm starting to put in more of the detail over the top. And this is the stage that I tend to have a lot of fun with, because it's kind of like you're getting past what some of us may call the ugly stage. And it's not that it's ugly, it's just that it lacks interest and the parts that we enjoy adding into the painting the most. So here is where I start to find my happy place. The only problem with this happy place is that sometimes it can be hard to recognize when it's time to step away and stop adding in more and more color and shadow and texture, because eventually, especially I have found with these pastels, things start to look muddy pretty quickly if you try to do too much. So that's something I'm still learning. And here's a fun little tip for you. So you see I'm using a very dark blue. That's what I'm using as the shadow instead of black. So on that cliffside, I used dark navy blue to add in the shadow instead of black. And that's one little trick I use to keep things from looking too flat and muddy, is for shadows, I like to use dark purples and dark blues instead. And that really has enhanced my work since doing that over the last few years. So give that a try. Instead of reaching for black next time, try a dark purple or a dark blue for your shadows. And right here was a really interesting moment for me. I sort of struggled with this decision to use the pastel to create these little fence posts, because I knew that the pastel was not going to give me a super tight line and it was not going to be able to let me get super detailed. And part of me wanted to reach for my tiny little watercolor brush and my watercolors and put them in with very tight lines with nice, clean, crisp edges. But then I realized that, one of my goals is to loosen up and make these paintings a little bit more quickly and get the basic ideas down. And I didn't need to have super duper amazing precision right off the bat with these fence posts. I then had to switch over to my watercolor brush though at this point with paint to put in these tinier lines, because I literally could not get it to show up with anything else. But this is a pain point for me of trying to let loose a little bit, make artwork that isn't so perfect and precise all the time. And it still looks great. It still shows that there is a fence there and you don't need to see every minute little detail that you might have been able to see in person. Like, in fact, I painted this more obviously than you can even see in the photo. But anyway, that's just something I'm personally working on, is just letting loose a little bit. So now I'm going to start putting in some brighter, peachier highlights onto things, and that also starts to kind of wake the painting up and make things look a little better. And then this choice here to put this peachy color onto the mountains, I loved that I did that. It made it look like sunlight hitting the tops of the mountains and the rocks here, and it worked beautifully. And that really is what kept happening the day that I took that photo, is the sun kept peeking through and hitting the mountains like that, and this effect worked so nicely with this kind of peachy color. So, and I'm glad I didn't go for like yellow. I grabbed this peach and it turned out so beautiful. I do kind of wish I had put a little bit of it into the sky as well. So that's just a thought to keep for if I ever decide to make this into a bigger piece or a more detailed painting someday, that I kind of make that note to myself that I liked using the peach and that I would like to put it into the sky as well. So this pencil that you see me using here is actually a white charcoal pencil, and I was really just experimenting with this. I've never used it in my artwork before. This is something that was given to me, and it wasn't super successful in this application. I think it definitely needs to be used on something pretty dark and something that doesn't already have a lot of texture to it. So that just didn't really work out in this painting. So instead, I will eventually go for my Copic white per usual because I love it so much. And here is where I find another use for this Copic Opaque White that I've never tried before but ended up absolutely loving. I've never put down this much Copic White before at a time. I'm actually using it to paint in some clouds. But then after I get down a really nice base of this, I tap in some of my watercolor, kind of this periwinkle pastel watercolor into it, and it makes the most incredible cloud-like color and texture when I tap color into the wet Copic Opaque White. I am definitely going to be replicating this process again for skies and clouds in the future. So feel free to steal this technique from me or give it a try if you want to. It was really cool and really fun, and I'm excited to see what will happen with other colors when doing this to make really cool clouds or maybe stormy skies. It worked really nicely, so I think here is where I'm about to try it. So get ready to watch some fun magic here. So I'm kind of blending it in and seeing how that works, and I'm liking it, so I do it a little bit more, and then I start to get a little bit braver with it and putting down even more color. So I discovered right here by making the paint nice and watery and also having that wet Copic white paint down, the more watery I made it, the more those colors and the white kind of married together a little bit better and made its own texture. Like I didn't have to do a whole lot to it if I didn't want to. And I even kind of blended this out a little bit more than I wish I had kind of left what had happened when I first tapped it into that right corner a little bit. It looked really cool. So I'm definitely coming back to this technique, like I said, because it's cool and fun, and I highly encourage you to try this. So at this point, I am wrapping up this piece now, and I'm putting in any last touches that I feel need to be, or any areas that I feel I need to call a little bit more attention to. So like the little posts here, and then I'm done. So this is painting number 10 out of 100. I'm currently trying to paint for 100 days. Definitely not consecutively though. I can't pull that off right now, but I'm trying to paint for as many days each week as I can until I get to 100 paintings, 100 sketchbook paintings, I should say. So this is also something I would encourage you to do. Take notes in your sketchbook. Make a note of what you were painting, what day it was, what materials you were using, and then at the bottom you'll see I wrote myself a little note about how much I loved using that Copic white for the clouds mixed with watercolor. And then I just kind of come back and make note of the favorite colors that I used from the different supplies. And it like really pulls the whole page together and makes a really nice little journaled sketchbook page here for you. So at this point, I'm going to give you a nice close-up view of the piece that I made today. I was really happy with how this one turned out. There are definitely some things that I learned that I'd like to try differently next time, but I think overall this was super successful. I hope you made some art with me today. I hope you had fun, and if so, give this video a like, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more, and I can't wait to see you again next time. Happy art making, my friend.